It was a letter that sent a chill down the spine, a message so sinister, so unexpected, that it seemed to freeze the very air in the room. The words, typed out in cold mechanical ink, carried a weight that was almost supernatural. It was as if the city itself paused, holding its breath, as the contents of the letter became known. New Orleans was already a city on edge, its people haunted by a string of brutal attacks that had left families shattered and neighborhoods gripped by fear. Rumors swirled in the humid air, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. The arrival of the letter only deepened the sense of dread, uniting the city in a collective anxiety. This was no private warning, no secret threat slipped under a door. Instead, the letter was published in the local newspapers, its words broadcast for all to see. It was a public spectacle, a challenge issued to the entire city, daring them to respond. The author called himself the Axeman, a name that would soon become infamous. His message was more than a threat. It was a twisted game, a cruel offer that forced the city to play by his rules. The Axeman claimed to be a lover of jazz, and in a bizarre twist, he promised to spare anyone in a home where jazz music played on a certain night. It was a demand that turned terror into a strange, citywide ritual. Imagine the scene, a city under siege where families huddled together, not in silence but in song. Gramophones were wound, bands played late into the night, and the sound of jazz drifted through the streets as a shield against death. For one night, music became a matter of life and death. The Axeman wasn't just a murderer, he was a showman, orchestrating fear on a scale the city had never seen. He turned the streets into his stage, and the people into unwilling participants in his macabre performance. His letter dripped with arrogance and dark humor, as he described himself as a spirit, a demon from the hottest hell, beyond the reach of any mortal law. He taunted the police, mocked the city's fear, and reveled in his own legend. He claimed to be invisible, unstoppable, a force of nature that could not be caught or contained. The Axeman painted himself as something more than human, a phantom who could strike at will and vanish without a trace. With this single letter, the case was transformed. What had been a series of brutal, senseless attacks now became the stuff of legend. The Axeman's words gave his crimes a twisted purpose, and the city's fear became a story that would echo through history. Before the letter, the violence seemed random, the work of a faceless killer. Afterward, the Axeman became a name whispered in terror, a figure who haunted dreams and darkened every doorway. He inserted himself into the public consciousness, turning his crimes into a citywide nightmare. People gathered in bars and on street corners, debating what to do, wondering if they would be next. The people of New Orleans were no longer just victims, they were an audience, forced to watch and participate in his gruesome performance. Every home became a stage, every family a potential target. The price of a ticket to this nightmare? Their very lives. The only hope of safety was to play along, to fill the night with music and hope the Axeman passed them by. And so, the stage was set for one of the strangest, most unforgettable nights in the city's history, a night when fear and music mingled in the humid air, and the legend of the Axeman was born. To understand the Axeman, you have to understand his hunting ground, New Orleans, just after World War I. A city of contrasts, immense wealth and deep poverty, old-world traditions clashing with the new sound of jazz. The air was thick with jasmine and decay, the city alive with music and secrets. Italian-American grocers living above their shops became the Axeman's primary targets. It was a city in flux, where anonymity was easy and the lines between communities sharply drawn. The Axeman's reign began in this chaos from May 1918 to October 1919. He was a phantom, a ghost who stalked the city by night, his identity forever a mystery, defined not by who he was, but by the terror he left behind. The nightmare began on May 22, 1918. Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine, were attacked as they slept above their grocery store. The killer chiseled a panel from the back door to enter, then struck with an axe and a straight razor. The scene was pure horror. Catherine nearly decapitated, blood everywhere. Robbery wasn't the motive. Valuables were left untouched. Police focused on Joseph's brother Andrew, but he was innocent. The only clue, a cryptic message chalked on the sidewalk, washed away by rain. The killer vanished without a trace. This attack set the pattern: chiseled entry, Italian grocers, brutal violence. The Maggio murders were just the beginning. A month later, the Axeman struck again. This time, grocer Louis Bessumer and his mistress, Harriet Lowe. The attack mirrored the Maggio's chiseled door, axed from the property, sleeping victims. Both survived, but Harriet accused Bessumer, then changed her story before dying. Police were left with more questions than answers. The pattern grew clearer: Italian-American grocers, silent entry, brutal attacks. In August, Mrs. Schneider was attacked but survived to give birth. In March, the Cortimiglia family was assaulted. Their 2-year-old daughter was killed. The city realized a serial killer was stalking them. Fear turned to panic as the attacks continued. The Axeman's focus on grocers was undeniable. The people of New Orleans felt hunted in their own homes. The terror was only escalating. In the midst of terror, as the city of New Orleans reeled from a string of brutal attacks, the Axeman made his next move. He wrote a chilling letter to the press, his words dripping with menace and dark humor. On March 13, 1919, his infamous letter arrived at the offices of the Times-Picayune, the city's most prominent newspaper. The editors, accustomed to sensational stories, were stunned by the contents. In the letter, the Axeman boasted of his crimes, calling himself a demon from the hottest hell. He taunted the police, mocking their inability to catch him, and seemed to relish the fear he had sown. The letter was more than a confession; it was psychological warfare. Its words rippled through the city, amplifying the terror that already gripped every neighborhood. People whispered about the Axeman's threats, and fear became a constant companion. But it was his final demand that became truly infamous. The Axeman professed a bizarre love for jazz, claiming that the music brought him joy and peace, even as he threatened violence. He declared that on a specific night, anyone whose home was filled with the sound of jazz would be spared from his wrath. The city's fate, he said, depended on music. It was an ultimatum unlike any other: play jazz or risk death. The message was clear, and the stakes were terrifyingly high. For one night, the Axeman dictated the actions of an entire city. Families gathered together, neighbors shared radios and gramophones, and jazz music echoed from every home and street corner. The choice was stark: embrace the music and hope for safety, or risk falling victim to the Axeman's blade. Silence was no longer an option. For New Orleans, it was a demand they couldn't ignore. The city's spirit was tested, and the people responded with a night of music and unity, even as anxiety lingered in the air. As darkness fell, the city braced for the night. The Axeman promised to return. Every note played was a plea for mercy, every song a shield against the unknown. The world watched in fascination and horror, waiting to see what would happen in New Orleans on that unforgettable night. March 19, 1919, New Orleans was transformed. The city, already famous for its vibrant nightlife and music, found itself at the center of a chilling ultimatum. On this night, the ordinary rhythm of life was replaced by a sense of urgency and dread that swept through every street and alleyway. The Axeman's letter had everyone on edge. Newspapers screamed warnings, and neighbors whispered nervously over fences and stoops. The city's residents, from the French Quarter to the Garden District, all shared the same question: would the Axeman strike again? As night fell, jazz music poured from every home and club. The haunting melodies drifted through open windows, echoing down cobblestone streets, as if the city itself was holding its breath and playing along. Families played records, musicians jammed in living rooms, even pots and pans became instruments. Children, sensing the tension, joined in, their laughter mixing with the music, trying to mask the fear that gripped their parents. The city was alive with music, but underneath was raw fear. Every note was a reminder of the threat that loomed, and every face in the crowd was marked by anxiety and hope. Every shadow, every creak could be the Axeman. People peered through curtains, watching the darkness, praying that the music would be enough to keep evil at bay. The music was a shield, a desperate plea for mercy. Musicians played with a fervor they'd never known, pouring their fear and hope into every note, as if their very lives depended on it. It was the loudest, most anxious party the city had ever thrown. People danced, but their eyes darted to the windows and doors, waiting for the night to pass safely. As midnight passed, the music played on. The city held its collective breath, unwilling to let the silence return, fearing what it might bring. True to his word, or by coincidence, no one was attacked that night. Relief swept through the city, but the memory of fear lingered in every household. The Axeman did not strike. Doors were locked, windows shuttered, but for one night, the city had outwitted its terror with the power of music. Whether he listened from the shadows or it was all a hoax, no one knows. The legend only grew, and the city would never forget the night it played for its life. For one night, jazz was the city's only defense, a melody of hope against the darkness. The Axeman's terror changed New Orleans forever. Doors were bolted, windows nailed shut, weapons kept close. Trust between neighbors eroded, replaced by suspicion. Newspapers fueled the panic, turning the Axeman into a national legend. The police seemed helpless, always a step behind. Citizens formed armed patrols, desperate to protect themselves. The Italian-American community suffered most, targeted by the killer and suspected by others. Theories of mafia involvement swirled, but evidence was lacking. The city was left scarred, its spirit shaken. The Axeman's crimes left a legacy of fear and mistrust. The wounds would linger long after the attacks stopped. After October 1919, the Axeman vanished. The attacks stopped, but the mystery remained. Police chased countless leads, mafia hits, personal grudges, lone madman. Suspects like Joseph Mumfree emerged, but nothing was ever proven. The brutality and bizarre demands didn't fit any clear pattern. Without modern forensics, the case went cold. The Axeman became a ghost, his identity lost to time. The city was left with questions and fear. The silence he left behind was as chilling as his crimes. More than a century later, the Axeman's story still haunts New Orleans. The case remains unsolved, a ghost story woven into the city's folklore. He's become a myth, featured in books, songs, and TV. The demand for jazz is the detail that endures, elevating him from killer to legend. Was he a musician, a fan, or just a sadist playing with the city's mind? The Axeman reminds us of a time before forensic science, when fear ruled the night. His crimes exposed the city's vulnerabilities and primal fears. The legend lives on, debated by true crime enthusiasts everywhere. The answers may be lost, but the search continues. Perhaps one day, someone will finally solve the mystery of the Axeman of New Orleans.